Hello viewer, the Nameless Scholar here, and welcome back to more Age of Sigmar lore. In this video I will be covering the Hedonites of Slaanesh, who are Chaos Warriors that have given themselves over to Slaanesh, the Dark Prince of Excess. Their purpose is simple, to live their lives fully and reach the heights of sensation, mainly pleasure. Slaanesh's followers can be from all walks of life, from the non-combatant to a swordsman who seeks to perfect his craft. The Sybarites, those who have accepted the way of Slaanesh, fight alongside its demons to bring excess and spread the word of their chained god to the mortal realms. Let's start from the beginning. What we know just before this destruction of the world that was, Slaanesh had devoured most elf souls alongside those who worshipped it. When the mortal realms formed, it realized that 8 new realms had presented themselves for Slaanesh to gorge on and mold them in its image. However, it also realized that there were no mortals to worship it. Because of this, the Dark Prince drooled. Still not enough that it had devoured all those souls during its time when the world that was still around, but it still wanted more. From the drool of the Dark Prince, demons scattered silently across the mortal realms and saw Sigmar and the others build civilizations on the mortal realms. This was the beginning of what is called the Subtle War, a war that is waged by the servants and demons of Slaanesh, seducing mortals with their greatest desires, which from the very beginning, slowly but surely started to rot the civilization of order from the core, but deep enough to be unnoticed by the gods. However, within that drool, something else had escaped. One person. One elf that Slaanesh had fun gorging on her soul and turning her into a hideous monster. That elf was Morathi. The other thing that Slaanesh had not expected was that their hatred of Slaanesh had united the 3 elves from the world that was, whom had become gods: Tyrion, Teclis, and Malarian. The Order Pantheon had laid a trap using the 3 as bait. While Sigmar and Nagash struck the Dark Prince by surprise, Tyrion and Malarian used the subrealm of Ulgish and their respective magics to create paradoxical chains that incarcerated the youngest of the Chaos Gods, so that it could not summon its demons, nor could it call out to its followers or even move without going through excruciating pain. Then, through Morathi's technique, the 3 elven gods started siphoning away half-digested soul matter. The first elf souls they restored were impure. Impure in the sense that their souls were withering away back into the belly from whence they came. Teclis saw these as abominations and opted to kill them. However, it was Tyrion whom had his twin brother spare these souls. When they learned that their savior was also to be their annihilator, these elves escaped deep into the oceans of the mortal realms. They would be later referred to as the Idoneth Deepkin. The souls that the elven gods later rescued, however, were better and did not have the Idoneth's condition. The pride of the Dark Prince was the reason why it was ensnared in the first place. However, the Dark Prince is not the only one with pride. Even while Slaanesh was imprisoned, its servants had rotten the societies of order to their core. Overnight, pleasure cults popped up out of nowhere, revealing their presence realm-wide. And throughout the realms, uprisings happened. The Lumineth realm lords had fallen to civil war, and the Brothers of Slaanesh also had their own plans as they struck against the mortal realms. Meanwhile, Archaon, the Ever-Chosen, attacked the 8 points from all sides, conquered it, and then attacked the rest of the mortal realms from the 8 points. That aside, Slaanesh's servants, due to it being filled to the brim with elf souls, had targeted Hyash and Ulgu. However, they were more successful in the former as they brought with it the Spirefall, which severely weakened the Lumineth. In Ulgu, however, they could not get through Malarian's empire as the Shadow King started to wage an eternal war against his ancient enemy, while they also failed to overwhelm the Daughters of Cain, being one of the armies to besiege Hagnar and failing every single time. Decades after the Realmgate Wars, the Dark Prince had a tingling in its belly. The one who escaped all those eons ago had returned to siphon more elf souls to reach divinity. It felt her devouring the essences of ancient elven kings, what remained of Cain, and stealing power from the Dark Prince. As souls escaped from Slaanesh's belly, and one of the elf souls retaliated against Morathi, Slaanesh used this to its advantage, glistening drool from 1,000 different mouths, and it coalesced into a single liquid orb that was protean and half-living. Slaanesh spat this out and then escaped from the gate alongside many other souls from the conduit that Morathi had opened. How it was able to escape was Morathi's ritual broke several of the chains that bound Slaanesh, which was also what allowed other souls to escape into the mortal realms. This spit manifested as a corrupted comet, which the Hedonites prophesied by one herald of Slaanesh, a mortal by the name of Glavia Sinhart. She said that the comet was the coming of Slaanesh's offspring, and that these two children of the Dark Prince would one day allow their father to break free from his chains. When the comet crashed onto the earth, thousands of Hedonites flocked to the site and witnessed the rise of Sinessa and Exessa, the voice and talon of Slaanesh. During the era of the Beast, the talon and the voice intervened in the Battle of Excelsis, seeking to use the Spear of Malice to get a one-up on Tzeentch. While Kragnos was rampaging, Sinessa and Exessa slaughtered almost all of Excelsis' Grand Conclave. However, Lord Commander Ceres Centanus of the Knights Excelsior Storm Host, alongside Galen and Doralia Van Denst of the Order of Azir, interrupted their rampage. I will not be talking about the realm of Slaanesh in this video, as the realm of Chaos and the respective realms of the gods are preserved for the realm of Chaos lore video. However, I will instead do a section that I have been dying to do for months, a lore video on Slaanesh. Slaanesh is the youngest and weakest of the dark gods. For most people, Slaanesh is the god of sex, drugs, and rock and roll. In real life, I mean. This misconception comes from the poster boys of Slaanesh, the Emperor's children in Warhammer 40k. The Emperor's children, including the Noise Marines, tend to be practitioners of self-mutilation, and they, alongside the Dark Eldar and the Fall of the Eldar in general, have also set the example of Slaanesh being a slippery slope into becoming like the Crossed from the titular comic book series by Garth Ennis, sadistic maniacs with no sense of self-preservation who wish to hedonistically indulge in their most carnal and violent desires. But Slaanesh is more than that. Slaanesh is excess, obsession, desire, and perfectionism incarnate. Slaanesh is the weakest of the Chaos gods, but her influence is more prevalent in sapient minds, which means that unlike that of her kin, her web of influence and secret cults within societies are greater than that of the other cults, as the Slaaneshi cults will not openly reveal themselves, most of the time, until it is time to strike and start an uprising. Slaanesh also appeals more to the non-fighter, as Slaanesh is empowered by excess in all of its forms, an artist who seeks to perfect their craft, an aristocrat who has time to indulge in all the sensations of the world, or even the everyman or everywoman, who wants to escape their dull lives, indulge in intimate activities, and feel them more heightened than ever. Every touch, kiss, and act becoming divinely. Everyone has different preferences for their bedtime activities, and it doesn't always have to be a slippery slope to becoming a cross all but in name, which is why Slaanesh is more insidious than the other Chaos Gods. Slaanesh tailors the perfect way that will have her potential followers fall to her step by step by catering to their exact personal desires, and this allows them to be hidden from the prying eyes of the Order of Azir. The martial ones maybe don't even care about carnal desires, only the perfection of their, say, swordsmanship skills. Maybe they just want to hoard wealth, found their own kingdom of depravity in the name of the Dark Prince, where it is a safe haven for those who wish to worship Slaanesh undisturbed. Or they are just addicted to conquest. Or they are about vanity and narcissism, perfection of the self. The reason why Khorne and Slaanesh are opposed to one another is mainly this. Khorne wants his followers to live and die by the sword, while Slaanesh wants them to live as long as possible to pursue their desires, perfection of their craft, pursuing intimacy with a loved one, wealth, indulging in food, and it doesn't always have to end up like them becoming someone with the crossed virus, or overdosing, or something along the lines. Slaanesh might be ruthless, but also caring to a point, tailoring the desires of her followers, where Tzeentch is so fickle he can simply throw away his most powerful followers just because, whereas Nurgle and his followers stay comfortable in their stagnation, while Slaanesh and her followers seek something better every time. While she was imprisoned, the greatest two deeds of the Dark Prince of Pleasure was the Spirefall and the Carthard Lul. They were more successful with the former, as they have pushed the Lumineth Realm Lords into a civil war that scarred the landscape forever by their enemies too busy fighting one another, while the hosts of Hedonites rampaged across the realms and culling elves by the thousands in the name of Slaanesh, whereas in Ulgu, Slaanesh waged a guerrilla war against Morathi and the Daughters of Cain, and failing to take Hagnar and other Cainite temples, while she wages an eternal war against Malarian's empire, which rages on even to this day. Teclis returned to the Dark Prince's prison and reinforced the chains. However, even the Great Mage realized a terrible revelation. He was only delaying the inevitable. No matter how much he, Tyrion, or Malarian reinforced the chains, it was a matter of when, not if, Slaanesh will be free. The day Slaanesh does get free is the beginning of an apocalyptic event that will be even more devastating than the recent Vermin Doom. The 10 paradises of Hyash were once opulent and imperial, smooth and perfect, and because it was full of elf souls, the Hedonites have made it their duty to spread the taint of their patron here. The Spirefall left in Hyash many gapes in reality and corrupted realm gates where a single prideful thought can manifest Slaaneshi demons in real space. The twin elf gods have done their best to purge Slaanesh's corruption from the realm of light by etching arcane runes onto the realm itself. However, the damage that Slaanesh and her followers did to the realm is ever present. The most influential Lumineth nation, Emetrica, once used to be a symmetrically perfect continent, but it shattered into parts. That was how close Slaanesh was fully corrupting the realm of light and molding it in her image even while imprisoned. Not only that, Tyrion and Teclis did not get the progress they wanted, as every season it seems that the Hedonite incursions are increasing. This isn't totally foreshadowing what is to come when the Dark Prince escapes. Totally not. Now, what is the state of Slaanesh in 40k lore again? Yeah, let's not get into that. Now, how a cult might take over a settlement or a Sigmarite strongpoint can depend. It might be conquered by Slaaneshi forces from the outside, or the more interesting case, subversion from within. One person. One person could be all that it takes for a settlement to fall to Slaanesh, whether an artist that wants to perfect his craft, or an aristocrat that wants to escape the bothersome politicking from time to time and seek better. This could also empower Tzeentch, but we'll say, for the sake of the argument, that this leader seeks the perfect. In real life, cults are oftentimes done by those within the state or funded by the state, at least protected by the state they are in, or they are funded by a foreign state. So it is very likely that the first corruption starts from someone who is a higher up, whom have a much more likely chance of falling to Slaanesh than any other. They could disguise this cult as being dedicated to pursue art worthy of Sigmar's name, should they want to gain the support of the populace much faster, as cults in real life tend to be sects of already existing religions. This way, they could build a vast and expansive network across the settlement and secure the support of the populace. They could do this by doing celebrations and festivals, having secret societies to entice people, and having the authorities turn a blind eye by blackmailing them. Once the culture is subverted enough and the populace is in vast support, they could initiate the overthrow and initiate a coup d'etat. Once it is successful and any remaining Free Guild hosts and the little Stormcast Eternal presence is defeated, the settlement can turn into what is called a City of Sin. This is of course assuming that the Order of Azir alongside the Lord Verditans of the Stormcast Eternals are not sent there, as they cannot purge every settlement at once. A City of Sin is essentially a settlement or a kingdom that openly worships Slaanesh. They are most common in Hyash, the Realm of Light, and they have made the vast ruins from the Spirefall to be their cities of sin / Hedonite kingdoms, as I like to call them. They can be as self-destructively hedonistic as Sodom and Gomorrah, or as anarchic as the Dark City of Komara in Warhammer 40k. However, it would be foolish to assume that all cities of sin are in this binary. A city of sin could be the kingdom of a Slaaneshi warlord who gets high on conquest, or a greedy chaos lord of Slaanesh who hoards wealth, or a place of hedonism that doesn't devolve into animalistic anarchy like Komara or in the Cost comics. These cities have the timeless beauty of both outside and the inside, with architecture which is the idealized version of an elven or Sigmarite city. Flowers bloom and crops are rich. There is incense in the air that heightens sensations. Every building is a masterwork of art. Artisans always seek to perfect their craft. Traders take pleasure and profit, and rulers revel in power and influence. Private indulgence is very common, as the city streets might be completely normal, except during festival and ritual times where there are feasts and orgies. Daily life is about living on and gain pleasure and pursuing your dreams. But doing so is never enough. One always wants more. Essentially, Slaanesh, by perfectly tailoring what they need, makes the City of Sin to be functional and not collapse into anarchy, so it can feed itself in the long term, as Slaanesh is obviously capable of long-term planning, as we see from the Spirefall and how pleasure cults take over settlements. For all intents and purposes, you can check out a City of Sin anytime you like, but you can never leave. And the price of partaking in the pleasures it offers is your soul. Now, onto the combat doctrine and the subfactions of the Hedonites. The combat doctrine of the Hedonites of Slaanesh comprise of a live fast and die fast mentality, where they swoop in with a lightning ray, tearing limbs, and after the enemy is defeated, committing the most depraved acts upon the prisoners they have taken, and the pleasure they feel and the pain they inflict upon their enemies actually distorts reality and makes the remaining devolve into their base animalistic desires. Now, There are many Slaaneshi cults and warbands all across the mortal realms. However, they all fall under three categories: the invaders, the pretenders, and the godseekers. The most numerous of them also happen to be the ones that focus on perfecting their martial skills the most. The invaders. They are Slaanesh traditionalists through and through, continuing to pillage, conquer, and form their own Hedonite kingdoms, as if the Dark Prince was never imprisoned. Some might not even conquer, but only pillage and move on to the next, going with the wind and never stopping. In battle, they will almost never retreat, and their bloodlust is on par with that of their cornate rivals. They believe that the best way to worship Slaanesh is not only to indulge in their deepest desires, but also to conquer and or despoil as much land in the name of their dark patron as possible. They have relics from the Age of Chaos, more than two other groups of Hedonites as well. The invaders come in all shapes and sizes. However, most of them are wise enough to stand aside when a keeper of secrets decides to seize power and stop their power struggles. Then there are the pretenders, who are led mostly by demons. The leaders of the pretender warbands are almost always demons or demon princes, because they vie to become the next Slaanesh and replace the imprisoned Chaos God. However, this subfaction of Hedonites is doomed, for Slaanesh desires to devour all of them the instant she gets out of his prison. The most famous pretender being Luxius the Keeper, whom was defeated by the Daughters of Cain during the Age of Chaos, a keeper of secrets whom claimed the title of Slaanesh. Only a few humans are arrogant enough to try to take Slaanesh's gilded throne. Finally, there are the God-Seekers, whom are true loyalists. Not only do they seek to indulge in their deepest desires, spread the word of Slaanesh, conquer and found their own Hedonite kingdoms, but also to find a way to allow their beloved patron to break free from her prison. They are obsessed with this hunt and enjoy the slaughter as much as their invader kin. However, they enjoy it as much as they genuinely mean it. Their task to the others looks like a task akin to fighting windmills, yet they continue and develop boons for it. Bat-like noses to smell the euphoria in the air, long tongues that can taste a drop of blood from 100 leagues away, and shark-like eyes that give them increased eyesight. Moving on to the units, starting with the demons of Slaanesh. A demon is essentially the manifestations of the worst aspects of emotions emanating by living beings given manifest in the realm of chaos, whom are the servants of the chaos gods. They are also extensions of their creators. For all intents and purposes, they are eldritch abominations. I will start with their leaders, the most famous of them being the Keeper of Secrets. They disguise themselves as giants with stunning beauty, yet are absolutely hideous. They can fight against multiple opponents at once without even flinching, and each swing of their weapons a perfect strike. They are horrifying combatants, as their weapons are almost like an extension of themselves. During and between battles, they can take on the form of the perfect person of their opponent, and as their name suggests, give them the most tantalizing, tempting, and luscious of promises. Almost no one can resist their promises, as by their nature, they know the deepest, darkest secrets of their opponents. They can also use this hypnotic power of theirs to whip their allies into frenzy. Now, before I move on, the named characters of the Hedonites of Slaanesh will be covered in their own video, so wait for them. The lesser demons who can act as leaders, for example, are vice leaders, whom are the most numerous. Although they enjoy the act of killing, it is not their main profession. They exist for one thing and one thing only: to put the already tempted soul into the slippery slope of damnation, and sometimes they will groom a target for decades. Unlike some demons, the vice leaders are patient as stone. If threatened physically, however, they can put their enemies in a trance and put them in a comatose state of bliss while they are torn apart limb from limb. Then there are the contorted epitomes, whom are two Daemonettes that hold an unholy mirror. These mirrors are said to have been invented by one Venaton a very long time ago, when he was held captive by Slaanesh in a prison of reflections. The Dark Prince was amused by the idea of a mirror that absorbs its power and empowers Venaton, and has gone to have its demon forges forge these mirrors to use in battle. When they are used in battle, they are particularly good at absorbing blunt attacks made by weapons such as clubs or warhammers, but not as good against piercing or slashing weapons such as swords, axes, or spears. And if you are unlucky enough to stare at your own reflection, you will just stand there dumbstruck, watching your deepest, darkest desires manifest in the mirror in grotesque ways as two Daemonettes tear you from limb from limb. There are the Bladebringers, whom during the Age of Myth used to be heralds that were given a sacred duty to bring Slaaneshi forged weapons in the mortal world. Leave these weapons for powerful warriors to discover. When the warriors did discover them, they went from champions to monsters, hedonists, tyrants, despoilers, and worse. However, the heralds grew jealous that they were not able to wield these blades themselves, and they developed a bloodlust that one could only see in a corn demon. Whereas they slaughter for the sake of it, they want to inflict the same suffering that those fallen champions inflicted upon others themselves as much as possible, wherever and whenever possible, by using chariots that have many saw blades and pointy things that leave nothing but fleshy pink pulp in their wake. Finally, the most disturbing of them all, the Infernal and Rapturous. These Daemonettes specialize in tempting musicians, who upon agreeing to the Faustian deal they make, start composing better and better music, and upon the battlefield that it plays music for, the musician completes his masterwork, but it is all downhill afterwards. While their music can bring a tear in the eye of even the most callous person, and then drive warriors into a violent frenzy, then the musician is reduced to a raving lunatic as they cannot make music that cannot top their magnum opus. When they are unable to take this reality in, the Enrapturous takes her toll and turns them into an instrument they can use in the battlefield. The demon turns them into an instrument called the Heartstring Lie, where their tendons are extended to create something akin to a harp. While the notes that plays from these strings of muscle, it brings great agony to the ones who hear it and make them do things such as dancing until their bones splinter, or make their heart burst from an unnatural happiness. The other, who is in a perpetual state of agony throughout this ordeal, is the poor artist that might as well not even have a mouth, even though he must scream at the top of his lungs due to the perpetual agony he is experiencing. Then the foot soldiers come in. Daemonettes. These are hermaphroditic creatures that are also known as the bringers of joyous degradation, or maidens of excess. They are created from the darkest desires of mortals and are the embodiment of the id. So, for those who don't know psychology, the id is a term that is essentially thrown by Sigmund Freud. The id is essentially, for all intensive purposes, the part of your psyche that governs your most basic needs. The need to eat, sleep, drink, reproduce, and that type of thing. Aside from that, these foot soldiers take the roles of torturers or courtesans. They release a pheromone that makes those who look upon them see the most beautiful woman or the most handsome man, and the only way to see through it is through sheer willpower. In battle, Daemonettes are dexterous killers who wish to outflank their foes and tear them limb from limb with their own forelimbs. Daemonettes are sycophantic beings and flock to powerful Slaaneshi warlords, stroking their ego and constantly seeking his or her attention. However, they are very capricious beings and get bored easily. Should the warlord falter, they will leave or even attack them, as even if the stronger Daemonettes, such as Vice Leaders, or their greater demon sisters, the Keeper of Secrets, can do long-term planning, Daemonettes are only focused on short-term pleasure. Fiends are like a mixture of monster and cavalry. These eldritch abominations are straight out of a book written by H.P. Lovecraft. They have two sets of lower limbs, which are vaguely humanoid. Their arms end in enormous claw-like pincers. They have what at first seems to be a tail, but is actually a weapon which acts both as a whip and a stinger that injects lethal poison to its enemies, for the fiend already has a fully developed spine. The most alien feature of this creature, however, is its head, semi-draconic and crowned with a pair of horns. It also has a long tongue that seems to want to lick any drop of blood and almost use its taste to track down a wounded prey. They, like Daemonettes, release pheromones that doesn't change their appearance. Instead, it puts their target in a state of euphoria and makes them hallucinate as they are tackled to the ground and torn apart. In combat, these fiends are faster than they look. The sounds they make are so alien and indescribable that whoever hears it has their mind turn into jelly, and it especially affects magic users. Then there are the Seekers, whom are Daemonettes that ride bipedal demons referred to as steeds of Slaanesh. Normally, a Daemonette isn't granted one. It instead has to get one in the green pastures of Slaanesh. However, it is easier said than done. How one gets a steed is to lure it with the promise of sacrifice, or lure it with a trail of beautiful-looking gems alongside drops of scented oil. And once chained and leashed to its new rider, a steed is essentially one of the fastest mounts out there, which never tires, can sprint for hundreds of miles, and only needs a victim or three that got exhausted trying to run away from it to continue going. Sometimes the Daemonettes will bear flags with the icons of the Dark Prince. Sometimes the rider will prefer to kill her enemies with her own weapons and kill as many as possible, while the steed injects a poison saliva with their long tongues to drain the souls of their victims. The war machines of the demons consist of chariots pulled by Seekers. These chariots have a pair of Daemonettes that attack their foes with whips and their own claws. One of their most favorite tactics is to catch their enemies with these whips and drag them behind them like Achilles did to the corpse of Hector in the Iliad. While this happens, the contraption behind them is pulled at lightning-fast speed by the Seekers due to its lightweight frame and mows enemies down. Then there are exalted chariots, which are just Seeker chariots with extra steps. And finally, for the demons, we have the Hellflayers. Unlike chariots, these aren't designed for speed. They are designed to mutilate the enemy as much as possible. The reason for this is that they were originally not meant for war. Rather, they were meant for all intents and purposes glorified lawnmowers. But they weren't cutting grass. They were cutting flesh of those who drew the Dark Prince's ire and grow like grass in what is essentially a fleshy limb orchard. Fingers, toes, limbs, and such are cursed to regrow like plants, so that these contraptions could harvest them and cause them immense agony, where there is no escape from. However, being the capricious creatures that they are, the Daemonettes got bored and they realized that they could use this against their enemies. The reason for this is that these lawnmowers are immense axles of bladed wheels drawn by two steeds and driven by Daemonette cavaliers. The wheels are star-like in shape and have magical properties that transform the souls of the slain into exhilarating incense. Now, on to the mortal soldiers of Slaanesh. which are called Sybarites. Now, most of them are focused on their martial skill and perfecting said martial skill, which is why the invader warbands are more common than all others, as they house these sadists who are just too good at their job conquering, despoiling, and founding their own Hedonite kingdoms. These can be, for example, Lords of Hubris, who have egos bigger than the mortal realm they are found in. They are called Lord of Hubris, for pride is the most cherished sins for the Dark Prince. They think that they can defeat literally anything and fight those who they deem can amuse them for a few minutes before they kill them for good. In their vanity, they feint strikes that they could otherwise easily land. They eschew armor in favor of speed, and instead carry a shield with them which has a mirror inside so they can look at themselves as they maim and kill their enemies. Then there are the Lords of Pain, who have the single purpose of inflicting suffering upon their enemies. Although most Slaaneshi warlords embody consciously or not one of or more of the 6 circles of seduction, the Lords of Pain don't. They are an anomaly as they focus on the single-minded goal of inflicting pain, both unto others and themselves. Not only that, Slaaneshi warlords whom find themselves on the path of becoming Lords of Pain find out that their true passion is inflicting suffering upon their enemies, as even their armor is filled with spikes which they can use to lacerate their enemies. And then there are the short speakers, whom are the soothsayers of the Hedonites. By looking at someone else with their hypnotic eyes, they can learn the greatest desires of the ones they are looking at. Slaanesh has always been fascinated by mirrors, and when one time corn demons shattered some of hers, she bade unto mortals shards of these mirrors, and they became the first shard speakers when they stared into these shards and saw an abyss of pleasure, and found the Dark Prince staring back into them. They also use these mirror shards against their foes and bombard them with promises of divinely pleasure and their greatest desires, which are very difficult to deny. Should they fail to resist these temptations, their souls will be trapped in the Temple of Twisted Mirrors found in the Palace of Pleasure, where they will see the husks of themselves indulging in their worst excesses. On to the foot soldiers, we are starting off with the Blissbarb archers. For these nimble-footed, scantily clad warriors, the day they picked up the mantle of Blissbarb Archer is the day they were born again in Slaanesh. They don't enter melee combat unless it is the most dire of circumstances. Instead, they seek to rain down volleys of razor-sharp arrows, using their crescent-shaped bows, which they wield with artistry. As do all Hedonites, their joy comes from sowing discord amongst the ranks of the enemy from afar. They also bring with them a concoction made of the most taboo substances, which may or may not involve decapitated foes. Their arrows are coated with this poison, and upon wounding an enemy, their nerves shatter and allows their other Sybarite kin to swoop in and finish them off. Then there are the Blissbarb Seekers, whom are the proof that even if Slaanesh can choose to have the patience of stone, she prefers short-term excitement. These archers, mounted on Seeker demons, have surprisingly high accuracy for those who mount lightning-fast steeds and fire poison arrows at breakneck pace. Some Blissbarbs, whom have had a near-death experience, might develop a desire to acquire an exalted steed, so they go to chaos-corrupted wastes and forgotten corners of the mortal realms, where only eldritch horrors and ghosts reside. Most die and are forgotten by the fickle Dark Prince, but those that live and finally get their beloved Seeker imbue themselves through a ritual involving spilling one's blood willingly. The Seeker and the Archer become inseparable and allows them to stay manifested in real space longer than most demons. Then there are the Slickblade Seekers, who got bored of shooting their enemies from afar and took a page from their Myrmidesh brothers and took up melee weapons to charge like the Light Brigade in the Crimean War. What exhilarates them more than the speed is to perfect the elegant strike of a single, decapitating blow with their ornate glaives to anger the worshippers of Khorne even more. They wear ornate armor on the battlefield that covers slightly more of their body, and the way they attack with their glaives are turning and slashing them hypnotically. Finally, there are the Hellstriders, who make Faustian deals with the Dark Prince to get their own Seeker in exchange for a tithe of souls, forever cursed to ride from one battle to the next with claw spears and whips in hand. They can never get off from the Seeker, and the fulfillment they get from killing enemies is very fleeting. They must also find new prey to kill, otherwise they will die from the horrible effects of withdrawal, starting from their faces and physique becoming ugly, to the complete erosion of their soul until their death. Finally, there are the elites of the Sybarites. Firstly, there are the Myrmidesh Painbringers, and they embody the martial pride of Slaanesh. Becoming a Painbringer, however, is not easy. One must overcome 6 trials that assault the body and the senses, the final one being the most difficult one, where they must ingest 6 different concoctions and survive an onslaught of enemies while hallucinating. Should one survive these trials, however, they are gifted an ornate scimitar and a rune shield. They wield these blades in a serpentine manner, and they don't care in which manner the strike happens, only that it causes great agony on the enemy. In their pride, they consider themselves apart from other Sybarites. They wear helmets that completely cover their faces to dedicate themselves to the killing blow, some even believing that their scimitars are the truest part of themselves. However, should a Painbringer's pride be insulted by an enemy, the serpentine precise movements of their sword becomes frenzied like that of a Khornate, until their enemy is reduced to a gory mess and their honor-bound facade returns. Then there are the Symbaresh twin souls, whom share their bodies with demons. Becoming a Symbaresh is done through the sacrifice of 6 elves and a rune of conjugation marked on their bodies, which means carving their skin. These former Myrmidesh choose any weapons and have grown bored of being a faceless Myrmidesh. They gain superhuman strength and speed and start to ignore wounds that can kill a man, and in battle, the demon drives its host into a frenzy. Most Symbaresh are doomed to have the demon possessing them to take full control and put them on the back seat. Only one Symbaresh was able to avert this fate, by the name of Egopomps. Through sheer willpower, managed to subsume the power of the demon, possessing him. It seems that he has restraint, something that almost all Slaaneshi lack, and even look down upon. Lastly, there are the Slangor Fiendbloods. Legends say that the original Slangors used to be an order of knights that men hailed as incorruptible. But one day, a fair-faced stranger arrived in their lands, whom offered the knights to take a sip from his silver goblet. Once they did, the next night they woke up screaming with terror. They realized that they all went through a metamorphosis, and the nectar they drank deep from the man's silver goblet was the Dark Prince's saliva, which tasted like honey. Then, the transformation really began, and they started to have this itch, this unshakable need to give into their base desires. So they descended upon the people they once protected, and slaughtered them to the man, and have done heinous things to them. But in Ulgu, it is whispered that to create a Slangor is birthed upon completing 6 rites of excess. The last of these rites is to drink the ichor of a Slaaneshi demon beast, whether it's a fiend or a seeker. Whatever the truth is, they are a reflection of the primal lusts that lurk within the hearts of mortals. And that concludes the end of this video. I am the Nameless Scholar, and never forget, Desire is the root of suffering. And this is a cosmic truth. It should not be avoided, but actively sought.